In this last section of Chapter 8, we are going to talk about simplifying our expressions. We're going to talk about multiplying algebraic expressions. And in order to do this, we need to use our properties. So we've kind of mentioned a couple of these properties as we've been going through this semester, but now we're going to properly define and talk about these. All right, so our commutative property. Our commutative property works for both addition and multiplication. All right, so we're going to write out two different statements, one for addition, one for multiplication. We're going to write these out using symbols, and then we're also going to describe these properties using some English phrases. All right, so our commutative property of addition tells us that A plus B equals B plus A. And our commutative property of multiplication tells us that A times B equals B times A. Right, so what this is saying is if, for example, we take the numbers 3 and 4. 3 plus 4 and 4 plus 3, either way we get 7. 3 times 4, 4 times 3, either way we get 12. Right? Order does not matter for addition and multiplication. It does for subtraction and division, which is why they're not included. Right? But for multiplication and addition, order does not matter. Right, and we've talked about that previously in a couple of sections as we've been going through Chapter 8. Right, our associative property. Again, we're going to have an associative property for both addition and multiplication. Right, so for addition, I'm going to write A plus, and then in parentheses, B plus C equals A plus B in parentheses plus C. For multiplication, A times B times C equals A times B times C. Notice in these that we have not changed order, right? Everything's in alphabetical order on each side, ABC, ABC. What we have done is we've moved our parentheses. And remember, as we were talking about order of operations, we were talking about parentheses indicating grouping. So our associative property tells us that grouping does not matter. Right, so our commutative property we've already used and talked about in some previous examples. We will use our associative property in our examples as we're going through, and our commutative property actually in the examples as we're going through some of these other problems as well. All right, and then last but not least, the one that we commonly refer to by name that we're going to use a bunch throughout this section and as we start getting into stuff with polynomials as well in chapters later on, and solving equations in chapters later on as well. Our distributive property has to do with multiplication, and then addition or subtraction, if we think about subtraction being adding the opposite. Right? We're going to have A times, and then inside we have a sum or difference. Right? And then what we can do is we're actually going to distribute that multiplier or that factor that's out front. Right? So we're going to rewrite this as A times B plus A times C. Right? So that A that's out front gets distributed to both the B and C that are inside. As we're using our distributive property, we're going to carefully watch our signs. Right? Our distributive property, I have it typed in words underneath there. Our distributive property tells us that our outside factor is multiplied by both numbers that are inside the sum or possible difference in there. Right? Thinking about difference is just being adding the opposite, so this all works together. Right? So our properties, we want to make sure that we're comfortable with which one's which. Our commutative property deals with order. Order doesn't matter. Our associative property deals with grouping. Grouping doesn't matter. And then our distributive property has to do with both multiplication and addition. We're distributing that factor that's out front to everything that's inside. Again, as we're working through these properties, using these properties, we do want to pay careful attention to our sign rules, and we do want to use these as we're going through in the rest of this section, the rest of the semester. We'll be using these properties and discussing these properties quite a bit.